welcome everybody in. And I just wanted to say that this will be a really unique show sharing topics presented by Harald Kautz. You may know him from the Bases interviews where he's speaking about black goo and such, as well as Morgellons and Nano-Tech and things like that. This will be an excerpt of a translation that was an auto translation from a German show on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and present what was said on that interview in English. So there may be translation problems, little slip-ups in the translation. I just wrote it down with a typewriter. I'm going to convey some of the information presented by Harald Kautz. So have a seat, relax. I'm wearing my tobacco-colored shirt today. And this will be about self-awareness and the power of returning to your own heart. Living from your heart space. This means knowing yourself. And not playing the part of whenever the mimic is looking to cast a role, rather than play that part in some mind control play. You choose to be yourself and choose the love that you've been creating your whole life. Welcome to Emanating Sovereignty. Today will be a special show. We'll be going over different topics presented by Harald Kautz about returning to the heart and how to get out of the Transhumanist Agenda through your choice. How to make it irrelevant. How to navigate through these muddy waters here that's rife with Morgellons, Nanotech, quantum dot eyes and dyes. We will be presenting this information that's presented by Harald Kautz. This is not my work. This is just a translation of a German show that I found on YouTube that I wanted to share for the English-speaking folk to uplift the folk soul of us all, so that we can not be bio robots, and we could be actually ourselves living from the heart. So welcome in, take a seat, relax, do what you need. Here's the beginning of the show. I believe the most important thing is that when I speak, or when you communicate with me, or when you listen to me, listen with your heart. The heart can distinguish between truth and lies. So if communication takes place in a heart connection, then you know it's authentic. And if I were to lie in the heart connection, then my mood would immediately show this and go to my head. Then you can tell when I'm talking nonsense, because I say a lot of things that might sound new or unbelievable to some ears. I understand that the question always arises, why does he say that? Where can I check that? And indeed, many things cannot be verified. You can only perceive other people's experiences as authentic when you listen with your heart while they speak with their heart. Does the heart or heart level actually exist in Transhumanist Agenda? Yes, it exists, but it's a poor simulation at best. So this has something to do with the field geometries, right? You know, from the Vedic traditions, these chakra mandalas, and there lies the heart of the 12 locks. And the lower emotions are always a 3- or 6-fold geometry. Thinking is binary, so you have 2 petals. And that's the field geometry of human consciousness. The heart is highly complex in consciousness at this point because it has such a high symmetry on the 12 level, functioning like a 12-petaled flower. And everything else is the 2, the 3, and the 6 from feeling. The 2 from thinking, the 5 from the solar plexus, goes into heart consciousness. 12 through 5 doesn't work, but it's a dodeca, which has another axis of symmetry that serves the 5, right? So the heart is essentially both 12 and 5 in its symmetry. And you don't need to explain it much. If you're conscious in your heart, you know that you carry a complexity in your consciousness that cannot be represented linearly. When I carry the coherence of feeling and thinking more within my center, that is a very unique feeling. I can perhaps simulate this by using an algorithm. I can try to calculate in such a way that I get the same results, but I cannot approximately simulate the complexity. When I'm purely mental, I can only be controlled by my head and perceive only in my head. I can, so to speak, have the representation of feelings in my head. I can think, I believe I'm angry. Yes, the word brings, or rather conveys, a memory of body awareness, and I can incorporate that into a language via the word. Then my head knows that, and I think that I'm angry. But that doesn't mean that I'm angry. I can simulate life up there. That happens quite a lot, doesn't it? So when I look at sociopaths who are completely lost in their own minds, they memorize how to behave so that other people think they are feeling, in that sense, there is an attempt in transhumanism to adapt and replicate the function of the heart. But because they're completely binary in their way of building consciousness, they can only create a copy and will never come close to the original. Okay, let's talk about transhumanism in a more detailed way now. In the preliminary discussion, you said, or rather, it's generally like this, it's not conspiracy theory or any secret. It's not an undisclosed secret file, but it's being openly discussed that this is the stated goal of various associations and various pioneers. Perhaps you can shed some light on this and give some information about this. You said you called it a confession. Maybe you can say something about that. Yes, the only thing people ever lie about is the question, how far have we actually come? But when I look at the issue from the perspective of what the WEF says, especially the resident philosopher of the World Economic Forum, he says, yes, the age where man has a soul is over, and we will evolve towards a fusion of man and machine, and the soul will lose its access to degrees of freedom. Well, he's certainly communicating that quite openly. However, when he communicates this, it's more like a vision of the future, offering to us as a future evolutionary step and made appealing. They don't say how far along they are along with it, how far along they are with that. Could one say they want a person without a soul? That they actually want that? Yes, or one could say they want our soul to get out of us, so to speak. And that's not wanting to. It's extremely far advanced. Yes, that's what I offer. And to explain exactly in which the steps and stages the original human consciousness is erased and removed, separated from the body, and overwritten by a computer-based avatar through communication with microwave packets and a connection to a central computer. That is what's being done. And it is very advanced, and yes, it is active in large parts of the population. Well, I don't know how many biorobots are listening to me because they're probably not interested in what we're talking about here. I suspect that the majority of people listening here are not yet assimilated, not yet Borgified. But we know the biophysics of embolization, and it has been completed in large parts of the population. Yes, I need to explain that a little bit more in detail, though. What is the term that has been almost universally understood by the population? Well, the principle of transhumanism is that. I start by spying on and reading consciousness. That means I need interfaces in the body that carry everything that floods through the body as consciousness outward, as wave reflections. I need intention systems that can read what is currently going on inside me as a human being. And then I need an algorithm that is essentially crafted in the main computer. What kind of things are located at the NSA in the United States? A personalized algorithm is created that observes me for a while and starts trying to predict what I will think and feel or do next. And this is a self-learning algorithm. Yes, whenever the prediction is wrong, it goes back to the core of the algorithm and changes parameters with the aim of getting to know me better. So eventually, all predictions about my behavior, feelings, and thoughts can be calculated with 100% accuracy and predictability. The moment there isn't a match, where the algorithm can essentially read and predict everything I do, it's no longer a problem to reverse the direction of the signal. And then I can start, almost like an add-on at the program level, influencing behavior that wouldn't even originate within me, but rather introducing patterns and thoughts and things that don't come from me. And because I have a smooth transition when reversing the signal, that person doesn't even notice they are suddenly being written to. Because at the beginning, they were overwritten with exactly what they were going to do anyway. There is no discrepancy. And then once that's established, you can, if you desire, start writing things in that you might not want them to do on their own, programming their free will. And with that, I have complete control over the avatar from within the computer program, and that is fully developed. That is a fully developed bio-robot. And how exactly does that interface come about? This is an external technology entity, so to speak, that's fed with information. How does that come about? There are 3 levels. The first level essentially targets the nervous system. These are called neural-nanobots, and they're small barium, strontium, phosphate crystals that form the node in the neural network. Then a synthetic nerve tissue grows on it, which does not have copper in the nerve tissue chain, but rather barium and strontium. It attaches to this crystal and it grows firmly in there, and it's stored in there in the ferritin shell. This is what the nanobot looks like. And every single impulse that flows through this nerve ganglion, it can then send a microwave signature outward from the piezo crystal. It's legible, right? Like, these are low, very low fields. It's roughly 2 volts per meter, which is measured at the brain when someone's actively transmitting. But it's basically for the technology, for the antenna technology, and that's specifically for personalized reading with 5G, right? Like, every person, as they move through the landscape, has a cone-shaped beam sitting on them, as it were. Only this person's information is read, and then the data from the nervous system can flow into the main computer. This is essentially the first layer. It's called the neural-nanobots. Now, how do I know that? There are promotional videos from the companies that developed this system where they describe exactly how such a thing is set up as a self-assembling nanobot, with beautiful YouTube visualizations showing this technology's self-assembly works. And if you have ever looked into the medical program with the bovine rhabdomyolysis, or the mad cow disease, however that's pronounced, if you ever look at the mad cow disease epidemic that was in Great Britain, well, there were some good researchers who examined the brains of these crazy cows, and they saw that they show exactly these nanobots. And it has something to do with the pesticides, or rather, that's the nervous system opened up to those pesticides there. A certain amount of silver, or cursilve, removes the turbulin, the protective sheath of the nerve, so that the nerve tissue inside, which should actually be protected, comes into contact with the connective tissue fluids. So if I then have pesticides from food in my blood, the copper is leached out. It's sort of shelled, so bound and bound and bound out. So in the nerve pathway, there is a protein prion copper. Protein prion copper is being built up, and the copper atoms are then extracted. Then I have these protein prion chain links, which supposedly cause bovine cramps and misfolded proteins. However, this is on a more symptomatic level, and these are then recombined by the body as they are misfolded. They then recombine with available heavy metals such as barium, strontium, and then form functional nerve tissues. The same stuff they sprayed in the air, the barium, strontium, that comes and forms the functional nerve tissue replacement here. Copper is magnetic. Barium and strontium are magnetic, which is why the nervous system, the nervous tissue, suddenly becomes radiosensitive. That is why so many people are radiosensitive these days, because their nerve tissue also has an antenna. That wouldn't happen with copper alone. The question is, how exactly do you talk about nanobots, about things more or less that penetrate into our body, into the nervous tissue, into the brain, in order to establish certain connections there, to transmit our behavior and thought patterns, to absorb them, and then later in this next step, to manipulate them? But how do we even record them? Do you have anything to say? Does that have anything to do with what happened under the guise of geoengineering, with those injections that were given to so many people, or perhaps even with movements that were discovered in the laboratory? No, those are the other levels. So the level 1 was the neural nanobots. So these neural nanobots are the particles from geoengineering. Yes, that is indeed hyperolysis and aircraft engines. These nanoparticles are created, they function in military technology, and eventually they rain down and enter the food chain. This makes them available. The organophosphates used to chelate the copper comes from the pesticides used in agriculture. So this isn't organic food that you can just wolf down with or without caring, because organophosphates play a role in the lubricating oils of aircraft turbines, and the cabin air is compressed almost directly at the engine. And if the engine is a bit older, the organophosphates from the lubricating oil always diffuse into the cabin air. This is why so many stewardesses and people who work on planes and pilots, they eventually suffer from neuronal damage if their bodies cannot properly break down the organophosphates. No, those are the two main sources of organophosphates: the pesticides from the non-organic food and the persistent issues from flying on holiday in older aircraft. Please elaborate a bit more on what's raining down on us from the sky, because it affects us all. We can still choose what we eat, but we live under the same sky, so to speak. At least that's what I assume. What exactly is being done there, and how exactly does this work, and what damage does it cause? So these are, or were, during the time I was actively researching this, the barium, strontium, titanium, piezo crystals doped with europium. This is not important for military technology, but for transhumanism. This dosing with the europium. It's necessary so that, so to speak, waves, packets that are received can be converted up and down. So a tripling of the frequencies only happen with this europium doping. So let's ask the question again. How do we know something like that? How do we know this is taking place? Take a raindrop, place it under a microscope, and you will see particles that magnetically line up like chain links all by themselves. And when you touch them with your finger and radiate body heat into these particles, then suddenly they begin to glow white. Name me one natural material that does this, that starts to glow when it's heated. That doesn't exist. It's all synthetic materials, and they're less common. They're synthetic. Among other things, the barium strontium is doped with europium. That does exactly that. It lights up. Yes, so I'm assuming now, based on the crystallographic analysis under the microscope, that the refractive index is correct, the electromagnetic behavior is correct, and the special quality of the upconversion of wave packets is visible. This way, we can see under the microscope that I have in the rain, we can see it under a microscope, that raindrop. So the determination is unambiguous. You can see it with your eyes. The second thing that can be found without a doubt is the whiskers. These are crystals that look like Christmas stars, and at the time, this was aluminum oxide whiskers used in analysis. There are other alternatives, but aluminum oxide whiskers are only produced in afterburners, i.e. only in the military aircraft engines. They are belly variants that can form in civilian engines at lower temperatures. So there might also be manganese oxide present, which is also nice because that stuff contains manganese oxide, and that produces flu symptoms without infection. For how many decades has this been going on, and where are we currently at? Is it the case that it's constantly increasing, that we're currently at the peak, or was there a peak and things are decreasing again? So it's a bit different. The first experiments were conducted over Hawaii. Now that was quite a while ago. Then at some point the continental was added to the North American experiments. I don't know when exactly that was done across the board. There in Europe since 1996, experiments in Australia, the first country, and since 2003 roughly across all participating states under the NATO Partnership for Peace label. Yes, that's not exactly a peace symbol. NATO has never stood for peace. Not a defense alliance, but a private army of private banks. And more talk on the NATO. So is it visible or not? It becomes visible when you fly. You fly through a silver streak. Yes, that means that I'm exactly at flight altitude, and at the standard flight altitude, a layer of particle plasma is stable. That's basically still the field of military technology, right? If I were to be attacked by Russia with an interballistic missile, degrees using technology can cause the missile to burn up. Okay, so about that missile shield in the air. It can be done at a push of a button. And that's not the point. It concerns the destruction of missiles and military technology. So it's about the noise, specifically three-dimensional noise monitoring. It needs these reflective plasma films, and it's about missile shields. Therefore, it's completely illusory that as long as the three major powers are hostile to each other, it's completely illusory that any of them will stop. Okay, that means that it's practically everywhere in the world. Yes. And is it the case that it's practically a permanent state? So regardless of whether I go out at 7 a.m. or 8 p.m., and regardless of whether it's stormy or raining or clear skies, it's always the same. No, the films are kept as stable as possible, meaning that they are maintained. Measurements are taken, and if a particle density is no longer correct, then it's spotted. Then spot spraying is done, and it's done to maintain these plasma layers. And only when the weather becomes turbulent, when the thunderstorm front rolls in and the air moves and enters the upper atmosphere, then the substance doses its substance. I believe the average lifetime of such a particle in the plasma layer was 8 months. But you notice that when a really big storm front rolls across Germany, the sky is suddenly bluer again in the days that follow. That means it's purer then. So if we see a blue sky it also means there's less of it in the air, so to speak. Less top, less bottom, further down. So basically worse for us at first. Yes, well, if one wanted to measure it, of course these measurements were stopped precisely by the environmental institutions. If you wanted to measure that, you would have to observe the UVB and the UVC, because these particles have high conversion rate. Yes, that means when these tear down here and are hit by light, they collect 3 light photons and emit 1 UVB or 1 UVC photons. That's why they have this condition that I can easily, because I'm such a Mediterranean child, I can easily go on a photo adventure, and on the way there I can spend a day baking on the deck of the ship over there in the Atlantic and not get sunburned. And if I work in the garden here in Germany in the summer for 15 minutes with my upper body bare, I get sunburned and I get heat stroke. And that's the UVB and the UVC. Because when these particles come down, they essentially collect light here and generate UVB radiation that should actually be absorbed by the ozone above, locally near the ground. That's why the skin cancer rates are declining, right? Because UVB, UVC exposure, the last measurement I saw before they stopped measuring was at 1400% of the natural level. But you say that on your photo adventure that if you go there on a ship, that's not the case. That means that something's covering that same area of the world. No, that wouldn't happen now over the Atlantic, will it? So west of Africa, that won't happen, but it wouldn't happen on the island itself either, because the La Palma Photo Agency has its space telescope in the air there, and they need a clear view of space. So spraying is prohibited by law anyway, or rather not desired by the system. Okay, so this means that the sun, which is actually important and essential to our well-being, is also manipulated and will also connect us well with our origin or with our soul. But that will be more or less taken away from us. The sun's natural radiation is filtered out, and in return you get a pretty ugly light down there on the ground, right? So UVB is still okay, right? That's why you sometimes go to a tanning salon. Soaking up a little UV light isn't really a bad thing, but UVC is so high frequency that it damages the skin. That is also where you get the sun, all that talk about the sun. UVC is highly toxic for the skin. So sunlight, which is the full spectrum from red to blue, is wonderful. Small amounts of UVB are okay, but the body can do quite a lot with them. UVC is toxic. Nobody needs it. And if you're at 1400%, then that's like being outside for a day, and just like being for an hour is just like being in the sun all day. And that's exactly how it feels. I can no longer spend my days in the garden here in Germany without my head frying away. And a hat won't help either, because UVC rays penetrate clothing and they pass through the skull and burn your brain away. That's sunstroke or heat stroke. Okay, so would your recommendation be to avoid getting out in the sun, or does an everyday outfit protect you from that? No idea. UVC penetrates aluminum. I don't think it's above a certain ceiling. Okay, is it 100% what you say, or is it always different in different shades of gray? Can there still be a natural spectrum from the... if stuff is grounded, so if it's being swirled around and falling out of the layers where it's supposed to be, then of course I have a stronger effect. It has a stronger effect. If I have weeks of calm weather, milky skies, and stable upper layers, then perhaps less rain will fall, and then it might not be so bad. But I don't have any measuring equipment. As I said, the government's measurement of all relevant matters has been discontinued. Barium monitoring has been discontinued in the EU. UVC measurements have been discontinued across the EU. These authorities, they don't want anything that's crazy, unnatural, or shouldn't be there to be recorded anywhere. I conducted the research using the old data. And when was the cut made? And when was the cut made? When did they start blocking that? And then monitoring was banned. Okay, so you just described inexplicably what the sun does to the skin, and this negative effect also applies to UVC radiation when I look at the sun with my eyes, just when I'm not wearing my glasses. No, it comes from the air. The particles are suspended in the air. UVC radiation comes from all directions, not from the sun, and it is not radiation from the sun itself. This is radiation that is generated by the particles when they are exposed to light, and then it is emitted, but in all directions. And the entire atmosphere is full of these particles, yes? And these particles are created, they're a part of the geoengineering? Exactly. Primarily, it's a military technology that's necessary, so there's a history of its development. There has been efforts since World War II to build radar systems in this way. That's still Nazi research, building radar systems so you can look at them in 3 dimensions, right? We know this from the movies, right? With ship radar, where I know where a ship is, but when I'm flying in the sky and engaged in an aerial battle, and I want to know what altitude the enemy's flying at, for this, I need 3-dimensional radar technology, which was developed after the Second World War, for all areas over the oceans, because the air is salty, and salty air is always highly ionized, meaning it carries free charge. And I need this free charge to be able to see in 3 dimensions, like a reflective background. This enables the technology to perform 3D scanning. And the military, the troops that defended the country, they were always envious of the Navy because the Navy could see across the oceans. But somewhere in the middle of the continent, these technologies they didn't work. And then the first consideration was overlooked. Can't we somehow ionize the air over the continents, stably ionize it so that the technology also works over the land? And continental rocket travels through space and only re-enters the atmosphere when it's right over the continents. I can't intercept them there. I can neither observe nor intercept them there. So please do these 3 radars over the land make it possible. And then the technological solution came about. We put metal salts dissolved in the methane into some kind of fuel additive, and in the engines, these fine nanoparticles are then created through spraying pyrolysis, and I have just had to mix my salts and the fuel additive in such a way that the engines produce these nanoparticles at flight altitude. But surely the consequence for us now cannot be that we lock ourselves in our room all the time. That's not healthy either. No, at the moment there is no healthy alternative except perhaps studying the sun. Yes, the UVC is controlled there. The muon tubes are outdated and emit poor radiation. Don't know what that is. Okay, so this UV issue, does it only come up when the sun is really shining? So that's when it's activated, or does it matter when I go out for, no, there's nothing at night. The problem doesn't exist at night because that's when the upscaling happens. The particle absorbs 3 photons and emits 1 photon with 3 times the wavelength. This quality of upconversion, and that's exactly what causes the problem with UVC. Of course, I need light for that. I used to drive at night a lot, and well, what about people who feel better when they're outdoors, when they're in the sun, when they get a lot of sun on their bare skin? They would just have to be careful with the dosage. Previously, being outdoors for a day was considered good in terms of UVC levels. Yes, and now after an hour, that's it for me. If I work longer, I can say from my own experience, if I work in the garden for more than an hour, then I get a sunstroke. In certain weather conditions, it's okay. I can't recall ever having this problem in my life. Since when has this been the case? Like, how long has this been the way it is now? This has been going on since 2003. The problem is they started spewing and spraying across Europe. This never happened before then. Before, the sky was also dark blue. Since then, it has been a milky gray-blue color. Interesting. Again, they started adding something that absorbs yellow, and now the sun is white because the yellow is absorbed by the sun. And the rest of the sky is a shade of blue again, so that it's not so noticeable. But anyone who remembers what the sun looked like 15 years ago, that the sun was yellow, just take a look. Look at the sun. It's white. And it's not the sun. It's the atmosphere that filters it. Just take a look. Look at the evening sky. Look where the sun sets. There are still contrails everywhere in the air on the far side where the sky is already night. And contrails are all gone on that side where it's all night. Why? Because the damn stuff photoionizes. It only creates water droplets in the air when it's exposed to light. And at night, the sky is clear. And during the day, it is milky. At night, I see the stars. During the day, I won't see a single star from that soup hanging up there. And no natural substance in the world photoionizes. That's some high-tech stuff up there. Yes, you said before that some islands, like the group of islands that have the telescopes on them, like La Palma, that's why there's a big hole in the chemicals in the sky, or a big hole in the soup. Okay, are there any other countries that might be like that, besides somewhere in the jungle, for instance, that may be like this? I have no idea for Central Africa or for Central America. I have no idea for East Asia either. But basically, everything that's in the entire NATO bloc, everything that has been even remotely civilized, well, everything civilized is good, right? It's like the Europeans who are civilized, and then they kill all the savages in South America because they're uncivilized. You know. Okay, I'll try to restring the bow here. So we also have two more interfaces for true transhumanism, right? We've kind of gotten stuck on the neural nanobots and the side effects and the components, right? They all come in components and biology combined to form functioning units. So at the second level, that's the combination of hollow fibers with quantum dots, eyes, or quantum dots. These are metal-based chemicals that have this ability to convert up and down. And they take in biophotons, absorb biophotons, and send out microwave radiation. So low frequency in a third of the way down, and then I can cut, so to speak, or read out the nervous system at the microwave level, but directly from the fueling processed in the body. Now these colors range orange and red. Yes, the whole area of creativity and sexuality and rage. These are the frequencies that are read via the second interface. And since these quantum dots are highly toxic, heavy metal based, highly toxic, I need a capsule. And then I have a protective shell that keeps the poison out of my body chemistry. And since hollow fibers are not easy to get into the body via the food chain, they do via a silica-based fungus that infects the body. And then these hollow fibers grow in the body. Is this the Morgellons problem? Yes, exactly. It becomes a problem if I have too much growth of these things. The infection rate is 100%. Everyone is infected. But it only becomes symptomatic when my immune system is so bad that the body itself says, I need this fungus to store the toxins that I could no longer break down myself. So if the body's detoxification routines completely fail, then the last resort where the body tries to prolong itself a little longer is to let these mushrooms grow, i.e. grow more than planned, simply to absorb acid and heavy metals that the body cannot handle. Normally, if you have that on the radar signatures, as it should be, each person has maybe 10, 15 fibers in their body that convert the light down and are visible in the radar image or in the 5G image. This isn't a health problem for the average person to have a few fungal fibers in there somewhere. And how exactly do these Morgellon fibers, how do we get these Morgellon fibers inside of us? Well, I don't want to name any companies, but the cow's health is so ruined by the constant feeding of antibiotics and glyphosate that all the cows are infected out there. It's not enough to just eat organic beef and I'm infected. I breathe that stuff in because it's everywhere in the air. It always goes into the lungs, okay? And the body has mechanisms to shut it off again. Well, a healthy immune system keeps them short, like a good lawnmower does, so they don't cause any further problems. Only when the lawnmower is broken does the thing grow rampant. Okay, well, to bring this full circle, I have an interface that reads my thoughts, so not thoughts, but my neuronal activity, and an interface that now reads the biophoton balance. So when we started, there was actually only this quantum dot available in blue and in red. Meanwhile, there are dyes that can absorb light qualities across the entire spectrum, meaning for all types of light in the body. So we have the ones in yellow, we have the ones in green, they even read the heart, which is processed in the green. Okay, I mean, I've already looked into this topic, but this information still is a little shocking to me. Well, you know, it isn't the first time I've heard this. I've heard some of your lectures and your interviews, but something else just occurred to me regarding this UVC thing you said, right? That's what is the radiation, that's what the radiation's called. And when I'm in a forest, in a shady forest, in a natural forest with all these terrestrial vegetation sounds and frequencies and so on, well, from your point of view, that would be a safe place, right? Like you can be in the forest, it's all okay. You also can get a little bit of sun in between, and that's not a problem, right? Yes, so factor 14 is what we measured. You can use that as a guideline, and then you'll be safe. You mean UVC? Yes. How can it be measured? Well, not anymore, because the measuring stations have been abolished. I don't know anyone who has UVC measuring devices. Otherwise, I might look into that further. I just go by my body's sensations. And if I notice it's getting too hot, then I get out of the sun. You know, what else am I supposed to do? Yes, I understand, but that also means, let's say, I think that there are also conscious people who take care of their health on all levels. But if they feel that way, i.e., they spend longer periods in the sun because it does them good, they have no sunburn and no sunstrokes and so on. So would you speak to them? I don't tell anyone what to do. I see what the research has found, and I say how I feel. Otherwise, everyone is responsible for themselves. Okay, good. So we've been talking about weather manipulation and the military strategies and their tools that they use, how these affect our brains, and how they connect to our nervous system. You just mentioned the Morgellons, but I think you have a third tool. Oh, exactly. The third tool has now been added via the COVID agenda. That is done by inserting genetic material into the human genome. They say that this is to produce spike proteins, but there's more than that. There is a quantum entanglement of a part of self-consciousness, that is, what DNA processes in terms of consciousness. And this is what is consciousness within the D-Wave computers. And in the D-Wave computer, it's tangible like the sum of all people. If I wanted to introduce things into the field now, so to speak, at the level of collective consciousness, I can do that via this entanglement, right? So I have a quantum entanglement between a certain type of computer and the RNA fragments that have been incorporated into the human DNA. They have a correspondence. They are in harmony. And if I technically create a certain field of consciousness in the D-Wave computer, it is transmitted to the people via DNA as a collective consciousness aspect. This is visible when it concerns only the injection or the actual virus itself or the spike protein and everything else. So the virus was created. The virus was manufactured on RNA printers. Yes, there are printing methods for the genetic engineering, yes, where base power for base pairs comes out of the printer, and there I can design any genetic sequences on the computer, then create them, and then when it's finished, I can also take a bacterium that multiplies and propagates it. Therefore, the virus is a bioweapon, and the bioweapon also originates from a concept. It has been printed and manufactured technically. Therefore, I cannot say which part of it comes from the virus and what part comes directly from the vaccination. I have the advantage that I can ensure that the vaccines are delivered directly and in a targeted manner via the delivery systems. I don't know what they're called, graphene-based mechanisms, directly into the cell nucleus and incorporate there with great precision. I don't have that with the virus. With the virus, it's more like a byproduct. Yes, if the virus infects the cell, with a bit of luck, then the sequence will be written into the main DNA. This happens via the virus's replication effect. But it's not really CRISPR. It's not the natural version of crisping. And therefore, I can't say where exactly these aspects come in. I would guess, and I only experienced that with vaccinations, because these people also have to follow certain spiritual rules. For some things, they need a declaration of consent from the people they are hurting. So from us, so to speak. Yes. And when asked, he also signed a document where he gave a year. It's like spiritual permission. Yes, and it has been communicated that this is gene therapy. Yes, that was no secret. These are things they've all been said. And they got the signature, and then they can allow themselves to do something like that. Simply release a virus into the world which, without asking anyone, violates spiritual law, which even the dark players on this earth actually make sure that they don't incur any karma for doing that. But don't they act as such either way? No. If someone says, please hit me, and I hit you, where's my karma? Like, I also have to say no. Yes, but if I say yes and I fulfill someone's wishes, where is the karma? There's no karma created there. You're following through with a contract. Can I hit you? Yes. Bam. Yes, the contract is in place, contractually agreed upon. Yes. I create the karma when I uninvitedly cross a boundary that causes damage to the other person, and that other person does not want that. That's why everything is being disclosed. They have already announced this beforehand because it makes it consensual. And it is also said that they repeatedly speak the truth about the numbers, or even, quite explicitly. Listen to that one guy in the WEF, like everywhere he explicitly says exactly what's coming. You will own nothing and still be happy. Yes, the complete expropriation has been announced, and we are so stupid to let the people tell us what they do, what they do want to do with us, and then continue walking instead of simply saying no. We are letting them run. We are letting them continue. We are not regulating them to insignificance. By simply allowing them to continue to operate in the positions where they have power, that is an agreement. How can we make them irrelevant? Yes, an act. And for an example, where democracy still functions, they can make an act where the parties in Germany, where I know for sure they would say no to that. Nobody knows about them, but there was a time when the Violets existed. Yes, the Violets are like a political alliance of all people for whom their spirituality is sacred. If the Violets suddenly had 100% of the votes and formed the government, then there would definitely be no longer any agreement at that level with these measures. But the government is completely in line with these wishes here. In fact, having a government at all is in line with these wishes. I can only say for myself, I won't give up an ounce of my power. I respect no law, and I won't let anyone tell me what to do. I do all day what I want to do, and nobody has power over me. I don't vote either, because the minute I go to vote, I cast my vote and authorize someone to rule over me. I'm not crazy. Yes, if I were to elect someone, I might even participate in such power game. But I've been observing the system for as long as I can remember. I saw the Greens running out screaming because the party had been taken over by globalists. The last two Green parties, Bastian and Kelly, committed suicide. And since then, I've had a bunch of life-hating warmongers. Yes, and the consequences for the stupidity. Oh, yes, and the people are so green. Well, I don't know. I think stupidity should be punished. There are consequences for stupidity. I think that it is perfectly fine if people have to bear the consequences of their own stupidity. I'm not even complaining about it. Well, let's talk about the solutions again. So, what's currently happening in heaven, or on the planet and so forth, frequencies, programs that are running there, we can't directly stop with our own power right now. Maybe in the long term, but what can we do right now? What do you suggest? What can each individual do each day to, well, retain their humanity, to maintain a connection to their heart and their soul, and not become part of this transhumanist agenda? If I don't eat poison, no poison gets in my body. However, even organic food isn't clean anymore because of the air. Yes, but there's still a difference between eating a banana with 5 milligrams of calcium and eating one with 50 milligrams of calcium. Definitely, yes, because if I don't consume any nutrients, then my body can't function at all. And it can't detoxify either. And industrially produced food is devoid of trace elements and vital substances. There's nothing in it. I am starving to death from the living. I stuff myself and I starve. And the only way out is to eat meat every day in order to get any nutrients at all. If I can completely get organic quality, or if I know my farmer and buy directly from their farm, or if I have my own garden and grow my own food, then yes, I can eat nutrients. And if I do that, then 1 meal a day is enough for me, and I don't need to eat meat because my body gets enough. We eat huge amounts of nothing 3 times a day, gaining fat in the process, and the body can no longer detoxify because all the metals are missing. So that's a choice I have. But I think that there are many listening here who eat very consciously and healthy and organically, and perhaps also integrate things like wild herbs and algae and microgreens and so forth and so forth. Exactly, and they're not bio-robots either. So that's already a part of the solution. So many of those listening are on the right track. So what else do we have to discuss here? Perhaps the topic is dealing with the internet technologies here, the AI and the social media. These are all tools that tend to draw us in. So if I'm invited to a studio interview, I'd rather go. I'd rather go in person and do the interview. I always have the choice to, and I have the research there on the internet. I do. I do because the media in that sense doesn't really exist anymore. But that's also coming to an end because I can't find anything on the internet anymore. I just find nothing but nonsense anymore. I find 100,000 channels, mostly AI generated, that obsessively tell me what I want to hear without the slightest regard for truthfulness, simply to capture my attention so that I stare at it and perhaps sell you advertising space. Yeah, that's, how YouTube is now. Everything I want to hear is told to me there. Whether it's true or false, that's irrelevant. Why should I even look there? It's a pain in the ass. Actually, you don't even need to look anymore. I don't need to do any more research because the channels that were still open and the first-hand experience were already there. But no, now okay. Because the channels that were still open and the first-hand experience were already there. No, there were war correspondents who walked through war zones with mobile phones and that they were showing what was actually happening there. I'm only getting CGI from war zones now, or computer-generated graphics, and I receive images that come from some war in 1963 used to illustrate some kind of fabricated stories. You can fold it completely, and you don't have to look at it anymore. I haven't completely given up because sometimes I hope that maybe you can still find a pearl here and there, but it's actually a pigsty. There are no pearls there. That time is over. There were times when that was good, when I was very active on the forums, right? Like if I wanted to learn something about the US military technology, I went into a forum where US soldiers talked to each other about their daily life. Back then you could still download data like that, but somehow the internet has been flattened. This now only serves the purpose of disinformation and distraction and is no longer the medium of the railway of truth or information. So back to the topic. We've already mentioned two pillars. First, a healthy diet. And second, a very conscious and reduced use of the internet and social media and AI and so on and so forth. What else can you tell us that is a possible solution? So the things that have been most important to me in the recent years here actually have been cultivating my own awareness. Because we were once created with this heart consciousness, with its offshoots, thinking and feeling, but basically all of this belongs here as an integrated consciousness, as a holistic field of consciousness. And because we've gone through so much horrible trauma over the last few thousands of years, these fields of consciousness within us have been shattered. And many people are basically love sociopaths. They can only think that everything else, they can only think that and everything else is gone. I'm excluding myself from this, of course. No, the way I came out of my childhood, I was completely sociopathic I was a complete sociopath with good intentions, but no longer able to feel. And why? Well, I was traumatized away. Everything was lost in my soul lost through soul loss. I have actually spent my life fighting to retain my ability to feel. And these are these inner self-healing processes. When you find out what went wrong, identify soul losses, and essentially call them back into the spiritual world. And that goes through going through the pain in order to reintegrate them. This is essentially the care of one's soul. That makes a huge difference, even on the physical level. Yes, a person who lives rooted in their heart cannot be overwritten. But to do that, I first need to perceive myself in my heart, in order to then notice when an algorithm tries to overwrite me. Yes, because then I perceive the attempt to be overwritten as a boundary violation. Then when I purely cognitively stuck in my own head and as a foreign thought mixes in there, when a foreign thought forces its way in there via the antenna networks, when 5G wants to overwhelm me with some kind of hate attack, and when I'm only mental and that comes in as a mental impulse, I can distinguish it from myself. I can see them ask, who's going to play this part for me? Because I can distinguish it from myself. Because the complexity of heart consciousness cannot be simulated. And most of the work has actually become normal in that people are happy when they can identify with a personality. Yes, that guy has a good personality. Yes, that girl has a good personality. Yes, I can handle that. That's cool. But that doesn't mean it's present in my heart. A personality is a mechanism that keeps trauma in check. This is a cognitive schema for how I deal with pain without having to feel it. This is a prominent figure in bioenergetics. Yes, if I only survive as a child by lying, then I develop a liar personality, and then I am doomed to lie compulsively for the rest of my life, because the personality automatically replays and learned patterns. It replays those learned patterns over and over again. Then I have pure compulsive behavior that has nothing to do with the heart. And there's the problem there. I have to decide on every little step. Yes, there is no predetermined being. There is nothing that I can use as a guide. I draw every word and every movement, every action from the abundance of creativity of my very being. Yes, I think that is, and it sounds relatively simple, but it is practically the basis or the most important thing of all that we can take care of, where we should look, sense, and feel. Hardly anyone can handle so many degrees of freedom these days. Yes, the immediately question to ask is, what should I do? And they're back in the program. Yes, restoring that is actually, in my opinion, the core task of everyone. And it sounds relatively simple again, but it's the most important thing that we can take care of here. Just looking at where we should look, where we should sense, where we should feel. Yes, well, thank you for your valuable input. Well, how could people contact you, Harald? Where can people find Harald Kautz? So for the guided healing work, the whole work on the soul, you can take a look at dasconsult.org, which is dasconsult.org. Exactly, there. That's not me, that's not Harald. That's an entire club that has emerged from it. So there's many people in there, and they all have the same kind of knowledge and skills, so you can contact Harald Kautz or work with him there. Though Harald is quite overbooked. He always has like over a year waiting period. He's fully booked, but for the colleagues there at dasconsult.org, it's usually faster. Thank you. So in summation, I hope that we who listen here can go back to the origins instead of the direction of transhumanism. Let's be in favor of this option and authentically choose to be self-aware. Return to the heart. Return to being within the heart, and let's flow from there. So if you have any questions or want to comment or speak about any of these topics here, please put them in the comments down here. Please hit the like and button if you want to affect that algorithm thing that they say. Do whatever you want. Return to the heart is the message here. I understand that it may be overwhelming of information, though not many people are speaking in the way that Harald is, and some of his interviews are only in German, so I went ahead and wrote the transcription here to share on Emanating Sovereignty. If you'd like to support my work or support all the hours of effort just here and recording this and editing it and everything, please donate it to the link here in the description. $5, $10, $100, Oprah Winfrey, $10,000 over there. You get a car, send me a car, send me a boat, send me love, or whatever. Feel free to donate, is what I'm saying. So thank you again. This is Emanating Sovereignty. We're back after almost 10 years of being off, and I'm looking to get some guests and interview or just do some more of these in-depth shows here. for unique content. Thank you for your time and for wherever you are and whatever walks of life you're at right now. You are more powerful than the hologram here, though you are also sourcing the hologram. So let's just give these thanks here and give thanks to the ancestors and no longer worship any of the false gods, because the gods should be your ancestors. So if you're trying to get those powers from those tokens out there that are some sort of gods or myth powers, that's doomed to fail, because anything where you're going out of yourself, that's not the way. You got to go within. So thank you for Emanating Sovereignty. It is so hot. I want you to know I bear a lot of heat. Just turn the fans off for this.
Modern life plantation, planetary devastation, real alien invasion, and we plug to the matrix, frequencies and radiation, hijacked imagination. Tell me what we conversating if we ain't talking activation. Really ain't no time for waiting, second guessing, contemplating. First I gave you prophecy, this is my philosophy, something far from Socrates. Yeah, I'm chasing sovereignty, but I was born a sovereign being, lived 100 centuries, booted off a sensu bean. Really ain't no sense in me, they try to steal my history. Rose above the misery so I can guide my young supremes, and I hit the keys with them, and our knees will never bend. False gods and serpent skins never fail, they never win. Focus on your dividends, this'll make the devil dance. Probably break you from a trance so you can peep what's deep within. Yeah. Meditation, elevation, inner self-realization, mental wealth for innovation, spiritually been segregated, diamond hits for activation, seen some things now I'm awakened, sleepy heads been sleep for ages, neophytes inside the matrix, lit the switch, I'm on the trip, ascension starts with proper basics, pranayama, breath of fire, manifest my life's desire, sheeples false on life's inquire, hidden truths for life's retire, third eye open, vibratory frequencies, all itself, the demons be a part of you, a part of me, please pardon me, for vulgar speech, the higher self is where I reach, back to back my brother's keeper, unity's my brother's teacher, earth, wind, fire, soul, activate like dynamo, heaven's gate, kick down the door, this the devil's rodeo, been here, seen some lights before, I'm searching for the hidden scrolls, I lost inside the physical, geometry's the visual, spread my wings like pigeon stools, solving no decision rules, inside you find the proper tools.